Good afternoon. My name is Bruce Berry. I work with Pro Sport Fisher, and part of what we sell and distribute is the Pro Tube Fly Systems. I'm down here with Jason Osborne at Northwest Fly Fishing Outfitters today, and as usual, we have a lot of liquid sunshine going in Portland, Oregon, so we're going to sit down and put a video together for you. Today we're going to do a variation on an old school pattern called the Thunder and Lightning, and without any further ado, let's get started. Alright, so the basic componentry that I'm starting with today is a Pro Tube flexi needle. Fix that to your vise. You're essentially ready to go. The thing I like to do, I'm using a nano tube, which is a new product, very similar to a micro tube. I'll show you that. It's a little bit longer than a micro, a little bit smaller diameter bump, and the little nipple that holds the hook guide is doubled up, so if you want to tie small flies, you can get rid of one. The hook guide comes in 4 different sizes, so you can go from size 12 hooks all the way to 10-aught saltwater. And the idea about these is you can add a color. There's 7, 8, 9 different colors, 4 different sizes. Once the fish grabs, it's flexible. They don't have any leverage to get rid of the hook, and it makes it easy with just a clinch knot to pull a hook in the back of the tube, or you can tie a non-slip loop and pull a monofilament loop in the back. So I like to slide that on the needle, then put my tube on. It makes it a little bit easier to make the connection point. And with that, here we go. Today I'm tying with 6/0 thread. I like Montana Fly Company, Vivus, Uni thread, all of it. Pick your thread of choice. Start the thread. The first thing I'm going to do is put a rib on here for this fly. And I like using the saltwater Flashabou. You can use standard mylar that's coming off a spool, whatever you like. And this is pearl, just to help give it a little bit of glow once it's wet and in the water. I'm going to secure that with a few wraps. Somewhat traditional spay style fly, so I'm going to use some of those attributes and then kind of destroy it by putting in some new twists on it and some new materials that you'll see here in a minute or two. So I've got my double rib set up. I'm just going to lay a little bit of a thread base down. Second rib is a small gold oval tinsel for this one. And again, your product of choice by company. Next thing we're going to put on is a little dub body. I'm not going to dubbing loop it and make it real fuzzy. This is called Fish Dope. It's by Montana Fly Company. It's like a half rabbit, half Angora. It's got some color match flash, highlight colors of Angora, and UV flash. It's fairly easy to dub, as you can see. If you put it in a loop, it's nice and spiky, and it's great. It works on steelhead flies. It also works on a lot of trout flies like lightning bugs and all the other hair reserves and things we like to tie. So pick a dubbing you like to work with. I'm just going to lay down a thin base over the tube here. And if you try this fly at home, it might take a couple of attempts. I want to try to get this so that the double rib has 3 turns and out on number 4. So the more you tie these things, the more you'll know how much dubbing length to put all down the tube. Just a bit more, and I think we're going to be good for our base. Real inventive fly, right? Black tube, black hook guide, and black dubbing. We'll add some color to it here in a minute. A little more interest. So I'm probably just shy of an inch of dubbing on that. I'd say it's probably a long ways away from an inch. It's about 5/8, just a little bit more dubbing here. It's nice if you don't spin it on too tight as you're winding the dubbing to the thread. It'll actually leave a nice little kind of semi-spiky effect. You can brush it out even a little bit more if you'd like to. Okay, so there's my dub body. I'm going to leave it just like that. The next step here is I'm going to put this rib on. That's again the mylar rib and pearl. 2, 3, and out. Okay, from here we're going to hackle the body. Thunder and Lightning's kind of classically been an orange, blue, and black fly. So the orange highlight I'm going to actually put as a slopping or a saddle hackle through. This happens to be just kind of a webby saddle hackle. So I'm going to put 2 collar turns And I'm going to go with one collar turn actually. And then I'm just going to spin that through the body. Spin my way back. And then what I'm going to do for some durability is take that gold small oval. I'm going to try to follow the first rib, and by doing so I'm going to lock down that hackle stem so we have durability for lots of use on the water or a few fish before it gets torn up. You find with the webbier slopping and the webbier saddle hackle, you just kind of sometimes have to wiggle that through there to let it find its way and not trap some of the hackle fibers. There we go, it's looking alright. There we go. If you do see that you trapped a few fibers, you can always use a bodkin or scissor points and pull them back out just like that. I'm going to clip that remainder of the hackle off. There we go. Cure that with a few wraps. Okay, so from here we have a new product at Pro Sport Fisher. This is going to be a little bit hard to see in the video. I'm going to try to rest it on here with my finger. And that is a Pro Raw weight. These come extra small through extra large. There's 5 sizes, and it's a 99.9 or some ridiculous amount of pure tungsten. So these pack a punch. This one's fairly small, but it'll help get a fly down in a hurry. And to secure that, I'm going to put a dot of Zappa Gap on. This one happens to be small for today's fly. Okay, let that hit the Zappa Gap, push it in place and hold it for a few seconds. Now it's going to stay put while I'm putting the rest of the fly together. You'll see that there's kind of a little neck between the hackle and the weight. And just because I don't like the neck effect, and you could even highlight it and go with a little maraschino cherry red throat or orange, I'm just going to continue with that Montana Fly Company Back in Black fish dip dubbing. Throw a little bit on there. No need to whip finish and restart your thread. Once the dubbing's gone, we just jump up over the top of it, put a few wraps in front of it. There we go. Okay. So for the next step, I'm going to put on a collar. I'm going to kind of spin this like marabou. This is called a Pro Arctic Marble Fox. This is something that's new from Pro Sport Fisher that's really close to being out. Hopefully we'll get it here and ready for people before Christmas. So what I'm going to do is clip a little piece of that out of the skin here, take the guard hairs out, and then I'm going to put the remainder of the underfur in a dubbing loop and spin it like marabou. Create something that's very, very durable, gives the fly a little bit of body, moves really, really good in water, and it can handle cold weather casting, and it can handle a few more fish than the marabou might be able to. So here we go. So we form the dubbing loop, I close the top end of it with a couple of wraps, I open that with my finger, and I've really kind of pre-prepped that underfur. So the guard hairs are already gone. I want to lay this in here, decide on my length, and then kind of spread it out a little bit so it doesn't want to bind on itself too badly. You'll find if you're doing this technique it might take a time or two to get it right without binding, but it's really not a very difficult maneuver at all. So I've got my length is defined. I want to leave some of the back end butts so I have something that the thread can bind onto. I don't want to cut it too short, but I want to get rid of some of that mass. There we go. I just want to spin that tight. There we go. And you'll see that that long fiber kind of tends to bind on itself. Let's grab a flea comb, a pick, some kind of a dubbing brush, and get that all pulled out. So you get your length back, and you'll know when you don't see a lot of these fibers coming out that you've put enough spins on it. I need a few more actually to tighten everything up. Okay, the bulk of those fibers are pulled out and I'm ready. I wanted this kind of sparse. You can use this kind of to suit your likings and needs. Add a little bit more, use a little bit less. So I'm not going to say that this needs 3 turns or 3.5 turns or 4 turns. I'm just going to put a few turns on here and see to about where I like it. And that's probably going to vary just a little bit on the amount of turns on how dense you make that dubbing loop each time. There we go, that's going to sweep back. It's going to work a lot like marabou and be a little bit more durable. There's what, maybe 3 turns, 3 full. Still nice and sparse. Put a couple turns to finish off that dubbing loop. There we go. Okay, so once you get done spinning that, just run your dubbing teaser through there again. Open that stuff up. Anything that bound while you were wrapping it. There we go. Just adds a hint of that kingfisher blue. It's going to move real nicely. And then the next move is going to be the same product. I'm going to put a black overwing a little bit longer on that. So this is somewhat traditional, somewhat Scandinavian, maybe a little bit of intruder. It just flies a mess. Okay, so what I want to do is get in here and comb through the bottom of this, take out any stuff, and it gets a little bit more dense towards the base, so that looks about right to me. Now I'm going to kind of check the guard hairs, and that looks to me just a little bit on the heavy side, so I'm just going to kind of pick through those guard hairs and sparse that wing out just a little bit. Okay, that's looking like what I want to do. So now I'm going to leave it full, kind of get my measurement figured out. It's a little short. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to cut this and try to cut it square or straight, 90-degree angle. And this is kind of a cool little maneuver. So I just put those butts in there a little bit longer. 1, 2, 3 wraps. And I'm going to put my thumb and forefinger on there. Just gently apply some pressure, wiggle that thing around, and the wing's going to splay a little bit for you. I don't know if you can really see that on the camera, but I've got essentially, I don't know, 110-degree flare on that wing. So that's going to give it a little bit more action in the water. That looks good. Here's one maneuver I really like with this. You can apply this directly to the tie-in point, or you can put it on your thread and then wind it over. That's going to keep that hair durable. You might want to do a little bit more precautions on a shank or a hook, because the shank or the hook doesn't compress like the tube does, so it doesn't take a lot to hold these hairs and materials on these tubes. I'm going to go with a little bit of angel hair. This is a purple color. You can go with a blue. Sparse that up a little bit. So we're going to tie that in. A couple of wraps. Double it back over. Lift that up, angle your scissors, and just kind of get in there and shear through that so you get some different lengths. You don't want everything to get wet and clump. A few long ones still. There we go. Okay, so now the main part of the fly is done. I'm going to finish it with a couple of turns of blue slopping. The idea here is that the slopping and the guinea collars on the front of this fly are going to take a little bit of the force of the water coming at it. See that, Jason? I broke my stem prepping it. Always an expert till the camera turns on, guaranteed.
Amateur.
Amateur hour with Bruce Berry. Okay. Counting wraps anymore. That's probably 3 full, maybe 4 full turns. That looks good to me. So we're going to tie that out. Put that back. Just make that tie out durable with a few more whips of thread. So here's the last step for this. Well, second to last step, I'm going to put a little cone to diffuse water on the very end, but this is a blue dyed guinea. I'm going to put a few turns. This is a really long one. I don't know if size matters on this one because I want it to be kind of a, not as big as a monster intruder, but something I can fish in the wintertime in low water when it gets clear and cold. Kind of that transitional time for summer steelhead fishing, when you go from that nice warm, you could steelhead fishing shorts to the weather's cold and the water just dropped a bunch. It's nice because it's easy to cast on a spay rod. It's easy to cast on a single hand rod. It's just a good fly to have in your box, something around this size, and see fish run away from it too often, which is a good thing, I suppose. Okay, so that's tied in tip first, dull side back, and I'm sweeping the fiber so it kind of lays wet fly style. As I get older, I don't know if I get smarter or more lazy, but this is one of my new favorite maneuvers. I'm not even sure where I learned it, but just dot the thread with a bit of Zap-A-Gap. Sweep everything out of the way. I'm going to put a few turns on there. Hold that for about 10 seconds. And no knot necessary. So for the finish of this fly, I'm going to show you a couple of cool things here. One is we have these new discs. Many of you that are familiar with Pro Tube Fly systems are already familiar with our soft sonic disc and soft disc. This is a brass version. Get this guy open. That's the color I want. This is a new brass version that has some weight, and that's called an ultrasonic disc. They're new in stock a couple of weeks ago. Most of the shops have them. Northwest Outfitters is fully stocked with small, medium, and large. So I'm going to slide that on. Kind of done here. So the last maneuver we want to make is showing you guys how to cut and burnish this tube cleanly every time without closing the hole. Okay, so to finish this tube without closing the hole, there's a couple of tricks. A lot of guys will spend 15, 17, 25, 30 minutes, half hour on their fly, and they don't want to ruin it. So they cut, you know, a long nose on the tube and try to burn it down. I would recommend, even if you're doing a brass disc or a soft disc on the front like I'm doing, cut that short. Razor blade cuts I like better because they don't squash the tube. So once I've got that done, and that might even be longer than the millimeter I'm looking for, I'm going to apply some heat to this. What I like to do is hold it vertical and bring the flame down to it, so we just roll the lip. Boom, just like that. Turn it to the other side. That way it just, nope, not quite there yet. Yeah, so essentially the hole's open. I can double check that by putting it back on the needle. Is that one still on? Mm-hmm. No problem. So the less material you burn on the front of the tube, the better. I think you'll find that they're cleaner. They don't close the hole. They don't catch on fire. They don't melt, any of that stuff. So there you have it. There's kind of a Pro Tube version of a Thunder and Lightning with a couple of different techniques, some new materials, and some new products from Pro Sport Fisher. Thanks for stopping by and taking a look.